Hello, in this session, we'll talk about team processes. Teamwork is an essential part of work life, especially with the rise of internet technology and social media. Organizations are now able to have people who are located far off from each other work together and bring their diverse expertise on team projects. Therefore, it's very important to know how do you make teams successful. And in order to answer this question, we need to look at what are the activities that are required in teamwork. Therefore, things like goal setting, leadership activities, coordination, cooperation, all these are important aspects of teamwork. And the objective of this module is to highlight for you important activities in teams that need to be done for teams to be successful. Therefore, I will present a conceptual framework that will provide you with these important concepts that you can take with you and use in your own work life to analyze how your teams are working. So, the model that I'll present here would be essential for effectively managing teams in organizations. And this model is known as team input process output model. As shown in this model, in order for teams to function, they need certain inputs. These inputs can include individual team members' characteristics. For example, if you have a team of engineers, so their expertise are going to be input to the teamwork. Then there are other types of inputs, for example, team level inputs, such as what is the task structure? What type of resources are provided to the team? So these can also be inputs to the team activities. Similarly, even at a higher level, organizational factors such as organizational design features, environmental complexities, all these can be inputs to the teamwork at hand. And at the other end of the model, we have team outputs, which are basically the achievements of the team. It can be in terms of team performance or the products or services that a team delivers. But how the inputs are transformed into the output. So these mediational mechanisms are known as team processes. And in order for you to know how to manage teams effectively, you need to understand what are some key activities or processes that are necessary for teams to function well. So let me first define what team processes are. Team processes are any actions or activities or interactions that teams engage in order to complete their tasks. So some examples would be idea sharing or coordination, communication, conflict management. All these are activities that people engage in their teams in order to complete their tasks. You may have noticed that in the diagram, in addition to the term processes, I have another term, emergent states. Now, emergent states are simply speaking emotional states of the team members, then how they view the team, what type of attitudes they have toward the team, what type of feelings they have toward the team. So essentially, these are psychological or emotional states of the team. Some examples can be how much pride do you have in the team, or how much trust you have in the team, how much committed you are toward the team. So all these emotional and attitudinal aspects that members have toward their team are known as emergent states. And the importance of emergent states cannot be emphasized enough in teamwork. Now, next, I will present some frameworks that will help you classify different team processes. The first framework divides team processes into three types: transitional processes, action processes, and interpersonal processes. Transition processes are conducted at the very beginning of the teamwork, and these include mission analysis and formulation, goal specification, and strategy formulation. So, all these big goal setting type of activities are known as transition processes. Once you have clarified what are your team goals, priorities, what is your big action plan, then teams can engage in actual implementation of these decisions that were made during the transition processes. And these processes are called action processes. And these include monitoring of the goal progress. Basically, you are tracking then how well you are accomplishing your assigned goals. Then you can also monitor the system that you are working within. This means that you can look at your team resources. You can look at the environmental factors that can impede or enable you to work on your team. Similarly, you can also have team monitoring and backup behaviors. These include helping members in accomplishing their tasks, providing feedback to each other, supporting each other, and completing the tasks. And finally, coordination processes that involve mutual interaction, communication, coordination of schedules, all these activities that are necessary for different team members to work together in order to accomplish team tasks. The third group of processes is known as interpersonal processes, and you need these processes both in transitional phases and action phases. Now, there are three types of interpersonal processes, and these include conflict management, motivation and confidence building, and affect management. First, conflict management is understandable when different people come together to work on a common goal and they have different personalities, different working styles, then conflict is bound to arise. And hence, in order for teams to surpass all these challenges, conflict management is going to be an important aspect of teamwork, and therefore, expertise would be required to manage these socio emotional processes in the team. Conflict can be preemptively managed in teams by bringing structure in teamwork, by defining rules, and by assigning roles and responsibilities, by instilling clear communication practices, and also having norms in team that encourage members to interact in a more productive fashion with each other. The next set of processes is known as motivation and confidence building. And these processes ensure that team is feeling confident about its capability, and therefore the team leader or all members are expected to build each other's confidence, provide feedback to each other, highlight capabilities of the team, and there should be individuals who are ready to provide pep talk to team members in order to encourage their morale. And the third type of interpersonal processes is known as affect management. These processes manage emotions that arise in team members. For instance, in order to accomplish tasks, members at times might feel frustrated. So, what do you do then? The processes where you calm down these members and try to show them the positive side and try to regulate their emotion or anger in team members will be affect management. Here, I would like to note that effective management of interpersonal processes results in productive emergent states. For example, if you are effectively managing conflict, then strong cohesion will emerge in teams. Similarly, if you can manage affective states and you can motivate team members, then it is more likely for teams to trust each other and team to have collective efficacy. Collective efficacy is another emergent state. Another typology of team processes looks at the type of activities team is conducting and divides these processes into two processes: task related processes and interpersonal processes. We talked about interpersonal processes in the earlier framework. In this framework, the task-related processes are divided into three categories: creative, decision-making, and boundary spanning. Creative processes can be important at different stages of team. For instance, at the transition phase, when you are thinking about big picture and setting goals, idea generation can be very important, and teams who know how to brainstorm effectively might be more successful. Teams make decisions in order to accomplish their activities, and in order to successfully deliver on these decisions, team needs to ensure validity of decision-making processes. And this means that there should be informational validity, which means that team members have the right information. And when you are gathering team members, you have people who have the necessary expertise or knowledge or information to provide input for team projects. Similarly, you need to have staff validity, which means that members are willing to make good contributions to the leader. They're committed. And also, you need to have hierarchical sensitivity, which means that there is openness and there is suitable culture in place where team members who have perhaps lower status, they feel comfortable to communicate their input or feedback to higher status members in the team. And finally, we need to have in place boundary spanning activities. So far, we have talked about all team processes where we are looking at interaction among team members, but you also need to interact with outsiders. And these boundary spanning functions look at interaction of team members with outsiders. In that sense, in the first typology, when we talked about system monitoring, during that phase, you might need to conduct boundary spanning activities. So, as a boundary spanner, you might act as an ambassador to the team, and your task is to go around and protect the team and persuade outsiders to support the team and get from them necessary resources for the team. Similarly, you might need to coordinate with outsiders. For example, if you're working on a marketing project, you're bound to interact with customers, and therefore the activities that you will engage in to coordinate information, communicate, all these will be known as task coordinator activities. And finally, scouting activities. So these activities are focused on gathering necessary intelligence for the team. So you might go out and survey the competitors to see what's going on, and all these will be known as scouting activities. So you might engage in these boundary spanning activities even for your school projects. Suppose you're working on a class project and the entire class is divided into several project groups, and you're supposed to complete this project in 1 month, and it is an essential component of your final grade. So here are some examples, and I would like you to think about whether it is a ambassador activity, task coordinator activity, or scouting activity. So the first example is asking the instructor to provide extra time for completion of the project. Number two, talking to friends in other teams to find out what approaches they are using to complete the project. Number three, working with a lab coordinator to schedule a time for running the experiment. So take a few minutes to think about it. You may also pause the video. So in the first example, you're trying to get an important resource from the instructor, which is time. And this would be an example of ambassador activity. In the second example, you're trying to gain intelligence regarding what other teams in the class are doing to be successful. Of course, you don't want to be far behind from others, and this intelligence is important. So, this would be a type of scouting activity. And finally, scheduling a time with a lab coordinator who is an outsider to set a time for conducting your experiment is a type of task coordination activity. Now, team processes incur benefit only when you gain more by being in the team and you are more efficient than when these individuals would have worked alone. Similarly, you say that you are incurring process losses when you are getting far less done in a team than you would have done by having these individuals work alone. So this is a very important concept, whether you have process gain or process loss. And of course, effective team management requires you to ensure process gains, and therefore knowledge of these processes and how you can effectively manage these processes is critical. Now, I would share with you a research study that would perhaps further drive home the point that how important these team processes are. This research study was conducted on virtual teams. What are virtual teams? Any team that uses email or internet technology as dominant mode of communication would be termed as virtual team, even if team members are sitting next to each other. Let's say you are a student team, and for completion of your project, for 80% of the time, you use Skype or email communication, then you are, for all practical purposes, a virtual team. In this particular research study, they studied 80 different software development teams that were spread across the world, and they were from different organizations, and these included companies in Brazil, China, Denmark, France, Germany, India, and United States. And the objective of this research study was to find out that if virtual teams are more efficient, and then how processes impact the performance of virtual teams. In order to measure team performance, they looked at two dependent variables, or you can call them criterion variables, and they were known as team efficiency and team effectiveness. Team efficiency were essentially how well teams scheduled to their budgets and time constraints, and team effectiveness was how well the teams performed in terms of product quality, customer satisfaction, and product usability, etc. etc. So, the first important aspect of the study was that it looked at how far away the team members are and then how well the teams perform. That is the effectiveness and efficiency variables. And they found that in general, greater the distance between team members, lower the team performance is. If you look at this graph, the lowest performance is when teams were in different continents. Compare this to when team members were sitting on the same floor. In these teams, both effectiveness and efficiency is much higher compared to when these virtual teams have members spread across different continents. But you may also notice that team performance is quite lower when team members are sitting in the same building. This was quite puzzling in the beginning, but upon further investigation, these researchers figured out that small distances can also be very challenging, and essentially, if members are sitting in the same building, they might underestimate the collaboration challenges that are present in the team, and therefore communication and coordination are really important and might not be given the due importance just because you're in the same building. So the lesson learned is that small distances do matter, and do not underestimate the challenges. Now, the next graph really highlights the importance of team processes. On this graph on x-axis you have dispersion, low to high. Low means, for instance, you're on the same floor, and high is the team members are located in different continents. On the y-axis you have team performance, which is effectiveness and efficiency, and of course it goes from low to high. The moderator in this graph is task processes. So you have teams that have really superior task processes, and then you have teams that have really dysfunctional task processes. Teams that had superior processes, these teams are shown by the red line, and teams that had inferior processes in place or weaker processes are shown by the green line. Now, this graph really highlights the importance of team processes. It shows that when dispersion is low, the difference between teams with superior processes and weaker processes is not that much. However, when the dispersion is high, then the margin of difference between the two teams is really significant. And teams that have superior processes outperform the teams that have inferior processes. Not only this, you would notice that in this graph, the highest performance is done by teams that have high dispersion as well as high task processes. So basically, it shows two things. One, as your dispersion increases, managers need to pay attention to all these task processes that we have been talking about. And second, in fact, when you have high quality team processes in place, your highly dispersed virtual teams can really outperform low dispersed teams. I hope this study has highlighted the importance of team processes. With this, we end our session. Thank you for listening.